I was 16 years old, a sophomore in high school. There were 9 classes a day, the 5th period was lunch break, and after that was astronomy class. My astronomy class was held in one of 2 classrooms in the school basement. My high school was large with 3 floors, and even that wasn't enough to accommodate all the classes offered, so the school built 2 classrooms in the basement. Honestly, it was a bit creepy down there when no one was around. It used to be the janitor's area, but it was later renovated to be more like a regular corridor. The only problem was that there was no intercom or loudspeaker in the basement at the time. For that reason, no classes were held there during the first period for morning announcements. Everyone called this small section of the basement the chamber, and everyone always tried to get a class there simply because it was air-conditioned and the classes were usually easier. Plus, it had its own bathroom. That day, we had an astronomy quiz. I'm usually one of the first to finish because I think the class is easy. After finishing the quiz, I texted my friend in the other basement classroom to meet me in the bathroom because I was bored. She said, "Okay." I walked out of the classroom and down the small hallway to the bathroom. A few seconds later, the door opened and my friend, JJ, walked in. We joked around for a while until JJ checked his phone and said someone had texted him that the school was on lockdown. We looked at each other with the same smirk. Neither of our teachers saw us leave the classroom. That meant we could roam freely around the school during the lockdown. We agreed to sneak upstairs and explore the hallway, just for fun. The worst we'd ever face was having to explain that we couldn't hear the announcements in the basement classroom. When we opened the basement door to the main floor, we were surprised to find that all the lights had been turned off, leaving the hallway pitch black except for the light coming in from the doors in the lobby. This was serious because the hallways usually had their lights on during the lockdown. Something serious was happening, and we were unsure whether we were comfortable walking around now. JJ walked a little further down the hallway, and I followed him. JJ then looked down the hall and said, "Who's that?" I turned and saw a man emerge from the darkness. At first, we couldn't tell if he was a teacher, but as he got closer, we realized he wasn't dressed like a school employee at all. He was dressed like a homeless person. "Let's go," I said to JJ as I hurried back to the basement. Whoever he was, he'd definitely seen us. We saw that both classroom doors were closed and the lights were off, so to avoid any commotion, we decided to hide in the bathroom. The first thing I did was turn off the lights, and then the 2 of us hid in the corner stall. The room was completely silent. There was no ventilation, no heating, nothing, just the sound of JJ and me breathing and the occasional trickle of water from the sink. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened, and the light from the hallway illuminated the bathroom for a moment. The door closed, and the bathroom was plunged back into darkness. JJ and I struggled to control our breathing. The room was so quiet we could hear someone walking toward us. The person stopped and began breathing heavily, as if out of breath. JJ and I were both scared to death. Then JJ did something incredibly stupid. He whispered in my ear, "We have to crawl out through the other stalls." However, the room was so quiet that even JJ's whisper could be heard from across the room. The heavy breathing outside the stall stopped and the person tried to push open our stall door. That's when I whispered, "Go, go," to JJ. The 2 of us crawled under the side wall to the next stall, then the next, and finally out the other side of the bathroom. The person was now pounding furiously on the stall door. JJ and I got up from the floor, opened the door, and as the light returned to the room, we saw the man from upstairs in the corner. We banged on JJ's classroom door. His teacher opened the door within seconds. JJ explained everything as she locked the door, mentioning that there was a gun sticking out of the man's pocket. I was surprised to hear this because I didn't see a gun, but I went along with it. Normally, a group of high school students would be laughing out loud at the sight of 2 students causing a scene like this, but I noticed that all the kids sitting in the corner looked worried. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door that made everyone jump, and several students screamed in terror. "JD Jolje." The teacher and I could see the man standing in front of the door, peering through the window and trying the doorknob. After a few angry bangs, he turned and walked down the hallway back to the stairs. We didn't know how much longer the lockdown would last, but for over an hour, we sat in silence, except for the teacher, who occasionally asked JJ and me questions in a very worried tone, shaking her head after listening to everything we told her. Finally, someone upstairs called the teacher, and she instructed us all to walk single file up the stairs and out of the building, where we would be greeted by police. JJ and I did our best to describe the man to the police and the principal. One of the officers patted me on the back and we were sent home. After this incident, the school installed cameras everywhere and increased the security budget. This incident never made it to the media, so we honestly never knew if the police caught the man. I'm sure that man had no other intention than to kill us right then and there in that bathroom stall. I am a retired New Jersey police officer. In my 20 years on the force, the most disturbing call I ever received was for a school lockdown at a nearby middle school, whose name I will not reveal for legal reasons. It was a dark and stormy day. My car number was called on the radio to respond to the lockdown, where a suspicious-looking man was seen getting out of a white van parked behind the school and entering through the back door near the boys' locker room. I arrived in the back parking lot of the school, right next to the white van. There was no one inside, and all the doors and trunk were locked. I opened the red back door that led to the gymnasium hallway, right near the locker room. The headlights had been turned off, so the entire school was dark. I pulled a flashlight from my belt and used it to navigate the hallway. I arrived in the school lobby, where a woman emerged from the front office, quietly telling me to check the boys' locker room, but to be careful because the man might be armed. I called for help on my radio and was assured that help was on its way. I returned to the corridor I'd entered from, where I found the men's locker room right next to the exit. I pushed it open very slowly. There were no windows in the room, so there was no light at all, just the light from my flashlight. There was a static noise in the room, some kind of ceiling vent blowing air, but even above that noise, I heard a faint scratching or clinking sound on the locker door from the other side. I should have announced my presence as a police officer, but honestly, I was too scared. The tension in the room was overwhelming. I held my flashlight in one hand and my gun in the other as I slipped to the other side of the locker room. It seemed like no matter where I was in the room, the clinking and banging sounds always came from the other side. I was standing in the corner of the locker room, right near the bathroom door, when the sound of someone slamming the locker door from the other side made me jump. I went in the direction where I heard the slamming and discovered it was coming from the boys' soccer locker room. There was no door separating the main locker room from the soccer locker room. The lockers here were also 3 times larger. I finally mustered the courage to announce my presence by shouting, "Police!" After I shouted, a boy started yelling, "Help!" from somewhere in the room. His voice was very muffled. The boy was banging on the locker door across from me. When I realized the boy was trapped inside, my stomach lurched. I told him I'd be right back, called for help again, and ran outside to where the white van was. The van was gone. My biggest mistake was not writing down the license plate number first. I told the operator to be on the lookout for suspicious white vans. I ran back to the school and instructed the front office staff to end the school day and send someone with the locker room keys to get the boy out of his locker. The boy was held at gunpoint by the man with a knife in his back. I suspect the man secretly tried to take the 12-year-old boy to his van. The boy's arm was bleeding from the man's injuries as he resisted. The man's van was spotted a week later in a 7-Eleven parking lot, where he was arrested after being correctly identified. I was staying at a Hampton Inn in New Jersey while visiting Rowan University, a college I was potentially interested in attending. My family couldn't come with me, so I was alone. After taking a campus tour, I went for a bite to eat at a nearby restaurant and then returned to the hotel around 8 p.m., planning to return to campus the next day. About an hour after returning to my room, a strange alarm started sounding in my room, along with a flashing white light from the corner of the ceiling. A message began playing on repeat shortly afterward, saying something like, "To all Hampton Inn guests, please remain in your rooms. This is a lockdown." I had never heard of a hotel lockdown before. I didn't even know hotels had alarms like this. I found it more interesting and exciting than anything else. Eventually, the alarm stopped, but the light continued flashing, and every 20 seconds or so, the message would repeat. It was only about 9:30 p.m., so I turned on the TV for background noise while I started changing clothes and brushing my teeth. I turned off the light when I was done and got under the covers. I watched TV for half an hour before turning it off. The light was still flashing a bright, blinding white light every few seconds. This was definitely going to disturb my sleep. I was starting to consider calling the front desk to ask what was going on when the phone rang. It was someone from the front desk. I expected them to tell me something about the alarm and when it would go off, but instead the person on the other end spoke in a very worried tone. She told me to stay calm and get out the door. I took the opportunity to ask what was going on. She went on to say that someone was in the room with me and that I needed to get out immediately. I dropped the phone and instinctively started looking around. Part of me was curious to see if there was actually someone in the room. I checked under the bed, looked into the empty bathroom. There was no one in either place. Then I noticed the closet door, right next to the bathroom. It was one of those closets with sliding wooden doors. The door was open just a crack, and through that small gap, I could see someone's face. At first, I didn't realize what I was seeing, but when the door slid shut, that's when I panicked and ran out the door. The people at the front desk showed me CCTV footage from an hour earlier, showing a suspicious-looking man walking down the hallway, apparently looking for a specific room. When he reached my door, he opened it with a card he'd somehow obtained, and that was it. I remained there as the authorities led the man out in handcuffs. It was, of course, a man, rather short, in his early 40s. He stared at me as he passed, as if he knew who I was. It's frightening to think that he'd probably been watching me for over an hour from inside that closet.